Welcome to another episode of the Vibes Podcast, man. I'm your boy, Two Dimple King, your favorite Leo. And today I have somebody special, different than most that we do, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and his amazing business that he has.
Tom Miller, owner of Crotalus Defensive Services. I do mostly self-defense, firearms training, but also do emergency medical training, CPR, first aid, all that stuff. Business was mainly founded, my experience in law enforcement, professional security, force protection. I noticed that there was a large tendency or a large need for civilians, but mostly women, to receive a lot of the same training I had received as a professional. So that was kind of the concept behind Crotalus Defensive Services.
Okay.
Kind of off the top business statistics, about 80% of my clientele are women. About 70% of them, if they stick with me for any period of time, eventually admit that they have a tragic story behind them that drove them to seek firearm and self-defense type training.
Right.
So that was kind of the business concept.
How long has this business been going on?
It officially started 3 years ago. It started getting bigger, I would say, about 2 years ago. Facebook actually just got restarted. I woke up
you got
one
it
day.
back?
Yeah, my Facebook disappeared. I think someone else complained about firearm content or something. So my Facebook just restarted. Unfortunately, that also restarted my reviews. So now I'm like limited on reviews again.
Okay.
But it's, always a work in progress.
What made you want to get into this line of work with, self-defense towards women and everything like that? What made you want to go that route?
But prior to being a professional, there's a girl, I call her my little sister. She's my adoptive little sister. She's a survivor of sexual assault, sexual violence. As a police officer, of course, responded to domestic violence, that sort of thing. Kind of, for whatever emotions I have, my heart does break when people are defenseless and they're encountered with a bad situation like that. So that was kind of my motive. More so than making money. I do actually take pride in being one of the lower cost instructors in the Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia area. That's actually something I take some level of pride in, and I still work full time and I have another business. While I making money is great, but at the same time, performing a good service and knowing that I'm helping others was more the driving motive towards founding Crotalus Defensive Services.
Okay. All right. Well, you might see, you won't, but there are two women here and they take your class.
Yes, both of them have taken me for at least one class. I think maybe both of them for multiple classes now. Hoping to bring them back in for women's self-defense in a couple months. I think they're still working on their schedules for that.
Okay.
But I do have women's self-defense coming up in July. And there's going to be 2 promotion codes posted in your...
Tell them, you speak to that
2 promotion codes posted in your intro section.
Yes,
for this video.
It's going to be right at the bottom to use them codes. And you have told me about this. And when you first told me, I was like, you do what? It was definitely a surprising to me. And me and you went in depth on it. And this is definitely something that you are very passionate about.
Yes. I mean, especially as a police officer, you start to realize that yes, you're doing a good service, and yes, you have a duty, but you're never going to stop something bad from happening, or at least that's not really going to be the mainstay of your job. Your mainstay is responding to an event, not necessarily preventing it. And there are deviations from that. And yeah, it's great when you stop something from happening. But especially for people that are in, the less dynamically advantaged category, which is going to be predominantly women. I think it's really important that they at least have the option to go out and get training how to take care of themselves, how to defend themselves. Couple like quotes I use a lot, especially when I'm teaching women self-defense. If we're talking about women's equality, then we also have to address women should never be relying on a man to protect them. And another quote I throw out there a lot is, ladies, teach your sons to respect women, because I'm going to teach my daughter to put them in the ER if they don't.
I respect that. Coming from somebody that has a daughter, I definitely get that. But you ladies take his class. So whatever one wants to go first, what made you want to start his class? Like when you started it, what made you say, you know what, this is the guy for me, through all the other programs that's out there?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I don't want to be another statistic.
Mm,
You know, the news, the day and age that we live in, the times. There's a lot that's going on, and you know, I'm smaller framed, like I might have a big spirit, but
mhm.
I can only get so far in a situation if I'm cornered or I find myself somewhere where I'm unprepared. So I wanted to gain the confidence and the skills for protection, frankly, to handle myself, and then to learn from such an instructor who has the background, the credentials, and you know, a sort of intimidating figure adds to that confidence
Yeah.
building. It definitely helps.
No.
No, I don't.
And what made you well, how did you even find this class to, want to go take it?
I found
Now I suddenly feel self-conscious.
Yeah. And what made you well, how did you even find this class to, want to go take it?
I found it through we were in Virginia, the Virginia Concealed Carry class.
Okay.
So I took his Virginia Concealed Carry class. And then even before that, I was curious to being able to actually handle a firearm.
Okay.
Like, this is interesting, but when are we going to learn how to shoot? And then I realized, oh, that's not this class. So then I had to figure out, well, how is it? But in the concealed carry class, I
Mhm.
was so comfortable and I felt like I learned so much just with that. I wanted to proceed with him as my instructor for the actual hands on firearm training. And I've been with him ever since.
And to add on, these are two very responsible students. A
Mhm.
lot of concealed carry classes, especially like the Virginia concealed carry, you don't actually handle a firearm in that class. It's all about law.
Mhm.
Um, Especially these students were very responsible. They realized that there was still a lot more they needed to know than law. They also, it's really good to know how to handle the gun safely.
Right.
And they took it upon themselves. They paid more extra money. They came back and took basic pistol. And then both of them took more training on top of that. And that's actually the good concealed carriers,
Mhm.
which is the overwhelming majority, honestly. They realize how much they don't know, and they want to be a responsible, well informed, but also very proficient and safe concealed carrier.
You make people feel safe. From the moment I met you into this and the lady speaking to it, you want to do more than just, like they said, just teach the law. It's actually important to know how to handle a gun, the safety of a gun. A lot of people now think, oh, it's just as easy as, oh, you just grab a gun and shoot. That's
No.
that's not the case at all. And you seems like you provide a service that's you're not money hungry, which is different. You're actually wanting to help the people and get the women in that you have to learn actually self-defense.
Yes. I guess you could see, like, I've always had a strong protective instinct,
Mm,
especially of others. I mean, played college football, lineman, offensive lineman,
okay.
actually, when I was playing Division One. So of course my whole job was to protect someone else.
Mm,
Then go on, work security, become a police officer, workforce protection, always, protecting someone else.
mm,
And that was very much what my company was about. You're not always going to have someone else there. You're not always going to have a police officer. As a matter of fact, statistically, very rarely will you have someone there when you need it.
mm.
So it was more about protecting others by teaching them to protect themselves. Prior to law enforcement, security, and all that, I had about 12 years martial arts training, both
Oh
traditional
wow.
martial
Okay.
arts like Ishinryu, and then a couple mixed martial arts styles. And then through professional training, I took a couple classes that were based around Krav Maga. So have a lot of like background around self defense, that sort of thing. And then, of course, tons of firearm training.
You are
Um,
definitely seeming like the guy to go to for self-defense. I will say
I'd like to
again,
be.
his promo code is definitely at the bottom. Was this you were speaking about, the woman that you call your sister? Do you keep in contact with her now?
Yes, actually, right before we started this, I called her to make sure, "Hey, is it alright if, I just give, like, that little synopsis of your background?"
Mm,
And how that made me very, protective and compassionate towards women in bad circumstances.
mm,
And of course, she obviously, since I just said it, she was like, "No, I'm all about it. Feel free to put
mm.
that out there." So yes, we're still in a lot of contact.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, live on air, I'm going to say it. I do appreciate both of you for coming on. I talked to Tom about this for weeks. He made it very apparent that because when he told me about this whole thing initially, and he said that his business, I did not know he wanted to bring what would you call them? Your students? Because these are
students, clientele.
Because y'all seem close.
Yeah, we're friends at this point.
Y'all seem very close.
They've taken me for some classes. But more than that, I mean, let me phrase it like this.
Okay.
There's been, especially in the media recently, there's been kind of a narrative that's put out, concealed carriers, they're afraid. And no, you concealed carry, so you never have to be afraid, or at least there's always a logical comeback to that fear. I will say, out of all my clientele, the ones that I consider some of the emotionally strongest ones and some of the ones I respect the most are young ladies, such as what we have here, that take it upon themselves to be both empowered, informed, and well-trained. So I do want to put that out there. A lot of respect for all my female students, but especially these two.
How comfortable are you ladies with, after taking the classes and going through everything you need to go through, are you still comfortable now concealing? Like, do you feel comfortable now holding a firearm on your every day to day?
Well, I feel comfortable holding a firearm and using a firearm.
Okay.
I don't conceal carry yet. I did take my classes, but I don't conceal carry yet.
Okay.
But he has let me shoot so many of his guns. And so many of them I like, and one of them almost knocked me off my feet. But I just enjoy learning, and I feel so much more comfortable with anything that he lets me shoot, because I know that he knows what I can and can't do. And if I'm feeling uncomfortable, he already knows, okay, you need to stand this way, or you need to move that way, or you need to lean, what he tells me most often, you need to lean forward. So I feel very comfortable learning from him, and I feel very comfortable when I'm ready that I will be responsible and ready to defend myself if I have to.
That's awesome. How about you? Are you comfortable?
Yeah, similarly, one of the classes that gave me a lot of confidence was the Avert Active.
Ready that I will be responsible and ready to defend myself if I have to.
That's awesome. How about you? Are you comfortable?
Yeah, similarly, one of the classes that gave me a lot of confidence was the Avert Active Shooter that we did.
Okay.
I'm a substitute teacher. I work in the school system and looking to become a teacher. And, this is an issue in our society in today's day and time. So I really wanted to get that training, and not just to handle a firearm myself, but if somebody else has one and it's pointed at me or pointed at children, to have the know-how to step in and try to mitigate that situation.
I did not know that. So I got a question for you. So
Sure.
with the media and everything wanting to promote more of teachers having firearms in the school and everything like that, do you find yourself in an anomaly, like, oh, well, yeah, I'm okay, being able to protect myself with the students and everything like that, since a lot of people are like totally against it? How do you waver on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict. God forbid, like, I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want that to happen anymore. But if I am, I definitely feel like I have the know-how to get up there and do something to stop the matter. And I do think we need more police force in schools, armed police force, armed security in today's day and age, because it's kids, who's gonna...
Are you nervous being a teacher now?
No.
Okay.
We always need to educate the next generation and uplift them. So we always need good quality, good-hearted, good-minded teachers. So whatever the situation, but I think we also need to be secure and protect them and deal with the times that we're in accurately.
I actually like that you say that, and he's a big opponent of that, to deal with the times that you're in. It's okay to be not scared, but just be prepared for if anything does happen. I like the fact that, I'm going to give it to you, I like the fact that you're preparing people to be safe and be able to protect yourself, God forbid, the time that you need to and you don't have. It's better to be prepared than not prepared. And it seems like that's definitely what you do. How did you come up with this name? Because I Googled this name and snakes kept popping up. How did you come up with this?
Okay. So prior to becoming a cop, I was actually working on my doctorate. I'm still technically working on my doctorate part-time. I do have a little bit of a brain in there somewhere. But way back when, actually my master's thesis ended up being on, it was research on sharks.
Okay.
But for a while, I was actually looking at research on venom of certain reptiles.
Okay.
And so Crotalus, it's actually the family that includes rattlesnakes. And so when I was kind of thinking about self-defense, and that was before, now I offer a lot of like emergency medical, like CPR, first aid, AED, that sort of training also. But initially it was just firearms and self-defense.
Okay.
And so when I was like thinking of names, the name popped in my head, and I don't want to turn this into like a geek talk about, you know, species specifics. But rattlesnakes are actually very shy. Like they never want trouble. They really just want to be left alone and get away.
Okay.
That said, if you encroach in their space and they think you mean them harm, they will absolutely put you in the hospital, as we all know.
Yes.
So that to me kind of defined what I would want someone to think about with self-defense is never go looking for trouble. It's okay to be shy. It's okay to try at all times to avoid trouble in any way, shape, or form. But if trouble comes knocking on your door, there's no way to avoid it. In that event, absolutely be deadly. And so the name popped in my head, and I thought about self-defense and thought, you know, the rattlesnake was a really good image for that kind of philosophy. And so it kind of stuck. Crotalus Defensive Services.
You are definitely more than meets the eye. Not the soon-to-be Dr. Miller.
Well, that's good. I need
Dr.
funding
Miller.
to finish.
Okay.
I need funding to finish my dissertation, so that's going to be a ways off. Like funding right now for pretty much all research that's not related to coronavirus is very dead at the moment. But most of my coursework's done. 4.0 GPA, by the way.
Okay. All right. Was not expecting that out of all the things that you listed. Just by the way, I'm almost a doctor here.
But I mean, I kind of left the academia field behind when I became a cop. I mean, there was just a lot there. I was getting bored more and more. And it was kind of like, okay, if you define your life not by how much you make, but by accomplishments, and how do you find accomplishments? Well, to me, that's about, you know, building up and helping others. Well, in academia, yeah, I was going to make a lot of money. But is that something really, when my time's up and I'm looking back at my life, you know, however long or short it might be, is that money going to equate to me as being worthwhile at that moment? And it's no.
No.
So, yeah, I did walk away from a career that was going to offer a lot of money, but you know, there's been some battles since with everything. Life does throw battles in your direction, but it's something I really haven't looked back on. But I've made so much progress too. I do want to finish my doctorate just to have it done. And
I think you're just so blasted just to have it done. Oh, okay. All right. So you have all these accomplishments. When you were growing up, did you always feel as though you could speak up or protect yourself as you were growing up?
Well, I mean, my parents put me in martial arts.
Oh, you pretty early.
Yeah, pretty young.
Okay.
So, I mean, there was a point growing up where I was actually bullied, and it was like before it clicked that I was actually, believe it or not, but then it started to click. You know, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, and then, you know, especially, you know, start working on football and everything, and, you know, start getting college looks, then it also clicked, well, I'm actually quicker than most. So bigger, stronger, quicker, and about the time all that stuff clicked, yeah, I stepped away from that kind of being bullied aspect.
Okay.
And maybe that shifted my mentality a little bit. You know, in that like puberty stage where, you know, you're kind of awkward and, you know, was the bigger kid and everything. Maybe in, you know, years past, it's made me more protective of everyone else or something. Maybe I'm not a shrink. I don't know how that played into developmental psychology. But at the same time, that's kind of where my life's taken me, and that's where I'm content. So
you did something that not a lot of people do, which is turn down the money for something you actually like, love, and care about.
I mean, I liked research too. It's just, you know, I liked using my mind, but at the same time, what I was finding more and more in that kind of stage of my life is the more successful I was, you know, the better you are at research, the more they expect you to write grants and reports and stay chained to a desk. And that's definitely not who I am.
Not a desk guy.
No. I mean, both of these two can vouch, you know, I'm very active.
No.
Like in the classroom, I'm never still, I'm bouncing around, you know. At the range, in self-defense classes. Perry mentioned one class I teach, the Avert Active Shooter program.
Explain what is an Advert program?
Avert. Okay, so HSI, which is one of the providers for emergency care training, kind of like the Red Cross, they bought an active shooter training program a few years ago, and they've done a lot with it. And it's a program I really, really believe in. I think it's a good program.
Yeah.
It's not about responding to an active shooter. I don't want to give that idea. I am a active shooter response instructor for military law enforcement.
Right.
But Avert's about survival. It's about surviving the worst possible day of your life. And so it's run through HSI. I'm actually an instructor trainer for it, so I can teach both students and potential instructors for it. But it is a program that I've come to really respect and come to really like. I do think classes like that, they kind of build a better mentality, but they also teach you, what to do, how to survive on the worst possible day of your life. So
that seems like what you teach these women here.
Yeah, well, I mean, on a different concept, because I mean, especially with women, if you look at the dynamics for like a typical self-defense encounter, that's very different from an active shooter situation. So it's almost like a completely different type of class. And Avert, it's a lot. It actually the defense portion of it's actually very small. There's stuff, treating emergency bleeding. There's awareness sections. There's just a lot to it, but the actual defense part's very, very small.
Okay.
Versus like my women's self-defense class, it is built around what I would call typical women's self-defense scenario.
Did you build into that in that course, or was it already constructed for you? You have to teach
Avert. That is a HSI run program, run through HSI and ASHI. Like I said, they're kind of the competitor to the Red Cross. That is their program. They're very strict about covering their material. I mean, as an instructor, they respect me putting kind of my spin on things as I'm teaching it.
Right.
But it is their program and their criteria. But as I said, I think they have a very good program.
Okay.
So
you recommend this program?
Yes.
Okay.
And not with me, but I mean, it's a nationwide program. So there's tons of instructors out there. Well, I wouldn't say tons. There's a lot of instructors out there.
I recommend it with him.
Right, about to say it.
I appreciate that.
It could be a lot, but promo code at the bottom. People want to work with you. It seems like your reputation, and from what you told me about your company, it is exactly what it is. You are doing an amazing job. From the reviews and a lot of people disliking what you're doing or how you're doing, you're actually doing good for people, and it seems like you can live with that.
So. Yeah. I mean, obviously a business, it has to make money. But at the same time, making a difference to me is a bigger principle there. If I make enough money to pay some bills down or pay off a debt or something, hey, that's great. And I'm not going to lie and say, I'm not making money, but that's not the main thing there. I actually take a lot of pride in being one of the more affordable instructors in the area, if not the most affordable.
There's nothing wrong with that. Promo code at the bottom. Ladies, I want to ask you guys a question. From knowing that you took in Tom's class, what made you want to get in his class? I know you were saying because everybody had their own situations, but if you guys want to share, what was the marker that you was like, you know what? I feel like I need to do something and either conceal or learn how to defend myself. What was that?
Well, honestly, I had zero training with weapons, and I wanted to have that training. So that was my prime motivation.
For me at first. And then I realized, like he said, how much I really didn't know that I didn't know. And once I started to learn, I wanted to learn more. And then I admit I got a little jealous when she got to take a particular class and I couldn't make it. So I said, well, I want to take it. And so I took it. I had to take it later, and I think I enjoy it when we can do things together. But this time it was just me and him this class. But I got to catch up with everybody else after I got jealous that they took the class. But for me, it started out as curiosity.
Okay.
And just really wanting to be able to feel comfortable if I did find myself in this situation.
And I probably should throw out there, I kind of helped start it, but I kind of keep a hands-off approach to it. I had enough lady clientele that I did put together kind of a ladies group. So these two are actually well acquainted. They're part of that group.
Oh, so you're the
And
star students is what's happening here.
but I kind
Yeah.
of started it, but I never wanted them to feel like
Okay.
obligated to stick with training with me. So
Yeah.
I kind of started it, linked them together, and then if they shoot me an email, they want some sort of training, they have a question or something, then of course I'm responsive. But at the same time, I kind of keep hands off of that group, so that they can always feel free to go to another instructor if they feel like there's something they need to
Mhm.
learn there or something, because that's about them.
You really give, I guess you guys can speak to it. Do you feel as though Tom gives a very comforting, but yet he's going to let you go if you want to see another instructor or something like that. But he's very free. Like you have the choice, but everybody seems to want to keep coming back.
I don't think I need a choice. I haven't looked for another instructor since I started working with them.
I appreciate that.
Like, yeah, no, I have no
Neither.
reason.
There's few instructors who will say, okay, starting time, end time, gotta go. Tom is not that instructor. He will make sure you understand what you came for thoroughly before you step out.
Okay.
I will add, I'm also very open. You know, in law enforcement, when I had an instructor that kind of implied, well, I'll teach you everything you need to know about this.
Okay.
That was always someone like, okay, if my agency needs me to take this class, I'll take it. But then that instructor in my mind's lost all credibility because no one person can teach you everything about anything that you want to know. There's always going to be a different
Yeah.
viewpoint that even if it's the same material where it's described differently or treated differently, you're going to retain a different part of it or more of it. And then there's always going to be another instructor that knows a little bit different segment of that topic that can give you something that this instructor couldn't. So I've never felt any sort of way if my students want to go to another instructor to take a class or anything. Matter of fact, if they email me afterwards, I'll actually ask, is it any good? Is there something I could learn there? Should I go take this class? And I still take every year. I try to take at least one class as a student and one class as a professional.
Okay.
Just so that I'm always learning and I'm always staying on top of new information as it comes out.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. What would you ladies say to a new lady wanting to get into a self-defense class? What would be your words to her if she's like, oh, well, I don't know where to go. Where should I start? What would you say?
Oh, I have plenty of business cards I can hand her one. I would absolutely recommend taking it with Tom. I mean, I'm also fine if you think it's a good idea to shop around, but I can pretty much guarantee that once she takes it with him, that she'll stick with him. I mean, because that's how we started and we feel comfortable, and comfort is going to be like one of the biggest ways to learn. I mean, mine was basically curiosity. Nobody's going to learn well when they don't feel comfortable or if they don't feel like their instructor has anything invested. And I don't have that problem taking a class with Tom.
These are star students. How about you? What would you say? Someone's looking for the right instructor or doesn't know where to start. What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, I would say don't hesitate. I mean, security is paramount in this world. You only have one life, so you've got to protect yourself. So, take the class, try it out. And I think most people will find that it's beneficial and that they want to add on to their knowledge and take more classes until they're classed out.
Is it possible? How many can you get classed out?
Very rarely does that become an issue. I mean, for one, where my classes are affordable, I can always count on at least a couple. If something comes up and they don't even bother notifying me. They just don't show up. So even if my class is at capacity, I can usually count on a little bit of wiggle room. But also, like, I want my students to learn. So me personally, like all my self-defense classes, especially where they are dynamic classes, I'm very conservative with the limits I'll put on students. Now, like basic pistol classes, that sort of stuff, most of my basic pistol stuff, NRA basic pistol, is run blended format. And I try to gear it towards, okay, the blended format, you're taking the lecture online, self-paced. That's actually one of the classes that's going to be available on the promo codes at the bottom.
He's good at this.
But most of the time it's going to be one-on-one with the student at the range. So I'm making sure they develop really good concepts with a firearm from the very basic level. Now when we get to dynamic classes like the women's self-defense class, which is about defending yourself, at arm's length range or less, I call it imminent close contact. Those classes, I still set the limits very conservative for how many into the class. And I've never had someone say, I thought there was too many people in there. And I do have friends that are also instructors in, law enforcement, self-defense community. So when I feel like it's going to be a bigger group, I always bring in someone else or something. So,
well, listen, it's clearly the class to take. So, ladies, now that we have you here from this amazing instructor, I did my
don't get too
research.
carried away.
From an amazing instructor. Tom here told me about you ladies, and when he was bringing this all to me, because this man has like 30 jobs, so when he was bringing it to me, he said to me, because I thought it was just going to be me and him, and then when he was like, "Oh, my students want to come," I was like, "Oh, okay, amazing. This is the first time I've had some students come, so that's awesome." But when he brought it to me, he was like, "Hey, I want to run something by you," and I was like, "Okay, sure." He was like, "Hey, I'm bringing 2 ladies, supposed to be 3, but one got sick, unfortunately." He was like, "Hey, they want to come on and they want to express their own story." This is before I knew about the defensive tactics and everything that you, doctor, gave me.
Not a doctor.
So,
training.
right. So I guess if you guys feel comfortable, whoever wants to go to share their own story, how they even wanted to get into firearms or defense or even end up with Tom, you can.
Well, I know statistically, like, I think it's 1 in every 4 women have been sexually, um, assaulted at minimum in this world. And I could go on about like microaggressions and certain things that thankfully, I haven't had any, intense experiences that I'm reeling from. But collectively, all those experiences, get you agitated. Like, I need to know how to defend myself in this world. And I have a smaller frame and I'm sort of soft-spoken and whatnot. So I don't want someone to look at me and think, okay, she's a target. Let me go after her. So I wanted that background training. And I think he's even inspired me to go get some jujitsu training and other things.
Okay.
To add to that, in my, arsenal, and then we're mothers and we're around children. So it's not just myself. It would be protecting the younger kids. And
I didn't know you. I didn't know you were all mothers.
I mean, not me right now,
Oh.
but women in general.
Oh,
like
God.
we carry the next generation of people, and it's a responsibility to know how to defend and take care.
So with that being said, what would be your words to someone who had one of those situations happen to them and they do not want to speak up or feel comfortable enough to like reach out to get a defense class or to even tell anybody, period?
I would say they're not alone, first and foremost.
Mhm.
And it's great to tap into mental health resources. There's a lot of organizations that do it for free that help the community. I would say make use of those resources. And then to consider it, to make sure that when something like that happens to you, you can have PTSD from it, and then it may be difficult to reel from it. Or if you find yourself in that encounter again, maybe you would freeze. Let's say you don't want to freeze. You would rather, be on your feet to handle it. So this kind of training can help counter the body's,
I like that. How about you?
I agree. I think exploring the why someone doesn't want to find out something. Could it be that it's just too complicated or I'm not ready to face that particular thing about myself? But once we figure out what is the why, then we can work through that a lot better most of the time. So everything can't be fixed. But I think that especially for women, if we can find out why it is that we don't know something or why it is that we don't want to know something, once we start to explore that and start to learn, we want to continue to learn, and I think that that's a great journey because once we start to learn, we can do more for ourselves. We don't have to, like you said, depend on someone else to defend us or help us to learn. It feels really good to be able to do those things for yourself.
What?
And I'd like to interject there. There's
Go ahead.
actually been some psychological studies done that found survivors of violence, sexual violence, domestic violence, whatever the case may be, they actually benefit from self-defense type training. I'm sure there's a shrink out there somewhere that could put a better face and parameter around it. But I would say just simplifying it from my understanding, reading some of the articles, teaching the mind that it can overcome and it can protect itself from being a victim again. So there's actually been some psychological studies showing a lot of benefit to that. As a matter of fact, I've talked to a couple women that actually found a lot of benefit from Krav Maga type training.
Right.
So, I mean, yes, I'm all about self-defense training from the preventative side, but it's also, at least at some levels, been shown to be very helpful from the therapeutic side, from people that do have tragic stories.
From the people that do have tragic stories, if anyone wants to interject, from people that do have the tragic stories, when these women or men come to you and tell you that, do you feel yourself getting numb to it because this is what you do on a regular basis, or is it every time a tough time?
I would never say I grow numb to it. I am very good at like shutting off emotions when I have to. I mean, you have to be. I mean, just as a base level police officer, you're going to make a traffic stop. Someone's going to feel a certain sort of way about it. They're going to start screaming obscenities at you. Like everyone that's walked the blue line has had that circumstance.
Right.
But I mean, then if you go to a domestic violence or something, you have to be able to kind of shut everything off, because you can't get emotionally wrapped up in this, because it is going to hopefully be a criminal case also. Right. So me personally, I'm very good at just shutting off emotions when I need to. So I wouldn't say I get numb to it. At the same time, when I have to deal with something, or I have to be there for someone, or I have to work with someone or train someone that's been through a bad event, I can handle myself professionally without getting emotionally invested in it. But at the same time, remain very compassionate towards that individual or that group of people. Or at least I think I do. I mean,
Yeah,
would you all say I can remain very compassionate while with maintaining professionalism? And
yeah, it's like the best of both, using your heart, using your mind.
Do you, with that, we are both dads of girls. So with all your life experiences teaching these classes with these young ladies, do you feel yourself bringing that home when you have a daughter? Do you replay some of these situations that you've heard and you got to go look at your young daughter?
Yes and no. Okay. There was a domestic I handled shortly after my daughter was born. And while, like I said, I could shut everything off to deal with that, but when I went home and I've seen a battered woman and kids in that situation, and I'm looking at my wife and my child, it did kind of click a little bit harder. At the same time, like, I want my daughter to grow up being very proficient. The restraining order is only a piece of paper. Like the pieces of paper can't protect you. So of course I want my daughter to grow up knowing how to use a firearm to defend herself, knowing jujitsu, Krav Maga, like all those styles that I've been exposed to. And I want her to always be able to handle herself. And like I said, parents, teach your kids to, or your sons to treat women with respect. Cause I'm going to teach my daughter to put them in the ER if they don't. That's not me being harsh, mean, or even funny. It sounds entertaining, but that's reality. If my daughter's ever in that circumstance, absolutely, I have no problem with her coming to me and saying, "Daddy, the other guy's in the ER." Like, fist bump, baby. Like, good job.
So I got a question, ladies. Feel free to interject. So, with having strong male figures like present fathers, or whatever the case may be, uncles, cousins, whatever the female child may have, do you feel as though, God forbid, a situation like that does occur, that, I don't want to word it, that if she doesn't come to you, that she comes to somebody? Because I know as a dad, I want to be like, oh yeah, come to me first. And sometimes that might not be the case. She might feel more comfortable with a friend. Or,
I mean, are we talking about if something happened or something happened? I'd want her to go to whoever she needed to. I mean, look, I'm also a big proponent for the mental health system. I probably say it on a daily basis anymore. The mental health system definitely needs a major overhaul. But I do hope the day comes where getting help for mental health becomes like a standard doctor's visit. Like, there's no stigma there. And I've had a lot of clients that have had to get help with mental health, and nothing but respect for that. They're taking care of themselves, and they're refusing to become a statistic. I've got a lot of friends, both military friends, prior military friends, and prior law enforcement friends. We lose 22 veterans a day. And pretty much all of them, I'm not gonna say all, but I'm gonna say the vast majority, if we looked at their specific case, they were probably scared to go get help or scared to go get help specific to that. And so they became a statistic. And that's awful. And both the country and the mental health system in that case failed them.
Mm.
I would love for it to come a day where someone going through something like that, they can go to anyone and get, support, but also go get help for whatever's, driving them to that ledge.
Yeah, and for
So
insurance companies to cover it and the cost of things to decrease.
yes, I mean
I didn't
that's
know it was.
almost.
This is my first time with you even saying it. I didn't know it was expensive. Is it?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people, like you were saying, that especially both of you, that mental health should become like a standard doctor's visit. So that's important that you actually said that. So thank you for actually saying that,
Yeah,
because it's
definitely.
important. But with this going on, do you find yourself getting attached to your students?
I mean, there's students I get to know a lot better, and of course, if they ever like go to another instructor, I'm always supportive of that. At the same time, like when I've had students for a few classes, it's always really good to see them come back, and you get to know them a little bit better. And it almost gets to be a little bit more fun because like they know
Just
some of the
knowing 'em.
jokes you make and stuff. So and you could talk a little bit more freely. You don't have to be careful about every joke you make.
Yes.
And also the weak points of each student.
Mhm.
Actually, these two I've shot with enough. I could actually recite like the areas they have trouble with. By the way, these two are actually great shooters. But at the
Thanks for
same
putting
time,
that in.
Yeah, right.
oh yeah. I mean, but at the same time, no one's perfect, right? Like there's still stuff I work on, before I go qualify at the range. There's still stuff I go
Sure.
to the range and work on. Like no one's perfect, and if you do things right, you're always learning. But like these two ladies, I've shot with enough. I've been at the range with them enough. I actually know the points they struggle with, and that makes it easier to teach them past like a basic level into more of like an advanced level,
Okay.
or past like a basic firearms level into like a defensive level firearm level, because I kind of know the weak points. And I know the areas they struggle with.
All right. So you guys currently in Tom? Y'all currently in Tom's class?
Yes.
I haven't enrolled for the next one, but it will happen.
How often are these classes? Because these women, from when you speak about their progression of from learning the law to being proficient shooters, they light up when you talk about this.
That's kind of a complex question. I get contracted by a lot of other places to teach for them.
Okay.
Focus Fire, Legal Heat are two of the big ones with firearms, both concealed carry class providers. I think both of you met me through a Focus Fire class, actually, right?
We did, yeah.
Okay.
Dane,
Yeah, Virginia concealed carry. So, I teach a lot for them. And if anyone wants, feel free to contact them and ask for me specifically, because then they'll give me more classes. But I pick up a lot of students from there too. People come up and they'll ask me afterwards, okay, like this was concealed carry. Do you offer a basic pistol or something? I'm kind of comfortable with you. I kind of like stick down your, teaching pipeline. But I also get contracts to teach. Recently I taught an avert instructor class through HSI.
Okay.
And I've also done a lot of CPR training, CPR instructor training. And every class I teach, I tend to pick up students that come back either to take another class with me, or if the class was teaching for someone else, like Focused Fire, Legal Heat, HSI, ASHI, anything like that. Usually at least one student's going to come and want to take something else with me. And even if it's CPR first aid AED, a lot of students come back after that and take avert them, because it's still considered kind of on that e-care pipeline.
Okay.
This year my schedule kind of got thrown off. I was starting to look at possibly joining another police agency and doing my third police academy.
Okay.
I
mean, you'll be what, like captain once you get your medical degree, right?
No, definitely not a captain. And I originally was looking like summer, so I stopped marketing all classes, because if I had to cancel stuff, I didn't want to have to like give out 1,000 refunds. And then things have got pushed a little bit further back, with just like recruitment timelines and everything is what it is. So now I'm kind of going back and trying to market some stuff back out. The women's self-defense class was always going to be a go. Avert was always going to be a go. But there was a few defensive pistol classes here and there that I ended up canceling. I just hadn't marketed it and not enough students. So
I definitely get it. What would you say is your biggest highlight, Mike's both of you, biggest highlight from taking these classes?
For me, it's my confidence level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I started out so nervous. I was probably shaking the first time. I was so
No
nervous,
comment.
but I was so curious. And but my confidence level now, I'm like, what you got? What we're gonna shoot today. Because for the most part, whatever he has, I want to shoot it. Even if I never shoot it again,
Mm-hmm.
it's so nice to learn it, to try it, see if I like it, and put it back in the box if I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm good over that.
Yep.
When you actually came back and did a competition, right?
I did.
Wait,
I
hold
did do
on.
that.
So you
You're being
said
humble.
you sat
I
here
did
and
do
said this whole you were nervous when you first
I
started,
was.
and you gained your confidence. Just like
I
him not
did.
saying he was want to be a doctor almost. You were in competitions.
And was in a competition.
What made you
We
want to do the
won't give you the
competition?
details of the competition.
She was second place for her flight or whatever. So
We won't give the details. But
That's good.
what made me want to do it? What were the circumstances? I think it was like the range was about to close because they had a competition and they didn't have as many people show up as they thought they would. So we were there. He asked me if I wanted to take it. I was like, I don't know. And then he said, take it, just try it. So I did.
And you liked it.
I liked it.
And you came in second place.
And I came in second place.
For a competition. You was like, I'll go give it out.
I'll go give
And
it a
how about
try.
you? What is one of your biggest takeaways from taking this class, period?
Yeah, similarly, confidence. I wanted the experience. I think his simulator training was really awesome for me because it puts you in a situation where there's like, a bad guy and you're there, and that really helped it sink into my skull of like what to do, God forbid.
So
Even-
it's safe to say everybody feels prepared thanks to taking his classes.
yes.
that's actually a good feeling from my perspective to have two students say that. The simulator she was mentioning, just to like throw out so everyone understands what that is. For my use of force classes, defensive tactics classes, self-defense classes, whatever you want to word it as, I did buy a simulator system. So when I'm using that, I usually have a 14-foot projector screen, high def projector.
Oh, wow.
There's sound and everything, but I mean, it puts you in the situation. You can talk to the person. There is interaction with the person, and maybe it's not all going to go to like deadly force or something.
Yeah,
like
right.
it might just be someone asking directions, to McDonald's or something.
Right.
Or it could go to deadly force.
All right.
And I mean, of course, you're taking a defensive type class, so you could pretty much assume most scenarios going to go,
Yeah.
towards some
Negative.
form of self-defense. But even then, you pull your simulator gun out, which they actually recoil and everything, just like the real thing.
Oh, so that just not like the blue guns or nothing like that.
No, I mean, of course I have God knows how many blue guns. I have CERT guns. But no, the simulator guns, they actually recoil and everything just like the real thing. They make a loud pop. I wouldn't say it's like a gunshot,
Right.
but it's a loud pop. And I mean, if you're used to wearing ear protection at the range,
That's what it okay.
I'd say you've used it. Like the pop would be equivalent to what you'd hear with hearing protection. I mean, it's loud enough to
not
get your
as
attention.
loud, but enough for you to get shook from it.
But it puts you in that, and I've seen a lot of difference in my students, how they learn since I integrated that system. The two biggest things I've seen from civilians are initially a reluctance to engage. In other words, someone's pulling a gun on you and they're still talking to the person who's now leveling a gun at them versus going for their gun. The second part of that I have to train out after that flips over is a reluctance to disengage again. And of course that's taught big in law enforcement academies. You're exposed to all these scenarios, so you learn in the right situation, you have to engage. Someone's pulling a weapon on you, there's that threat there, it's imminent. You have to be willing to engage, but you also have to be able to shut that switch back off.
And not engage when it's not needed. Yeah.
And stop engaging when the threat disappears.
Was either one of those hard for you? Either one of those to start engaging or to stop? Was either one of those hard for you when you first started?
Yeah, it's hard to read the situation because, you're like, yay, I'm in my neighborhood having a barbecue with my family. And then, boom, somebody comes in and you're like, wait, there's a couple seconds of you just trying to grasp what's happening. But then you become better from the trainings to just kind of get a read on you know how to handle people, and what if they're coming in with aggression, if they're coming in with their hands kind of like about to do something to you, then you have to react.
Your motion was amazing. Okay. Clearly you've been taking a class. I was like, oh, okay.
It also trains the concept to keep, you know, one of the biggest problems with the human brain. And I mean, your military service, you probably saw this in basic. Same thing in police academies. Initially, they put you into the black. They overload you, sensory overload, and your brain just shuts down. And the more you're exposed to that, the more you're exposed to these scenarios, your brain starts to learn to cope with it. So it doesn't go in the black. It goes to an alerted status, but it doesn't actually shut down. It doesn't freeze. And that's what another thing the simulator system's really, really good for, is teaching the brain not to lock up in those situations. You know, someone comes up to you and they pull a knife, your brain doesn't lock up, and rather it processes the situation and acts appropriately. Now, I do always tell people in relation to that, if someone wants your wallet, give them your wallet. Your wallet's not worth fighting, you know, potentially risking your life.
Yeah, or like throw your purse and run the other way or whatever.
Absolutely. That said, if someone wants your body, life, or soul, those three things are definitely worth you know, taking it to the highest level of self-defense, or if you just want to call it what it is, violence to defend. So in those situations, you definitely have to commit.
Yeah, I would say what both of you just said, that makes sense, because a lot of people are will put their life in front of their pride. So someone wants to grab your purse or something like that. You were speaking about you just being more quiet and smaller, things like that. Let it go. I feel like a lot of people, is that purse really worth your life in this exact moment? And like we were saying,
absolutely.
No, it's replaceable. I can just make a call and cut off my credit card. Like, take it.
And what I said, absolutely. I mean, absolutely not. I kind of got cut off there. Absolutely not.
Sorry.
But no, my concealed carry classes, I covered that.
Yeah.
Never let your mouth write a check you don't want to have to cash. Never let your mouth talk you into a fight. Always be the most laid back person in the room. That said, like I said, relating back to my company's mascot, the rattlesnake, if trouble comes that sticks itself in your face, you do what you have to do to walk away from it.
And you say you teach, well, women's self-defense, and you do males also, or you just primarily?
I don't have a male specific course, because I probably just wouldn't be able to get the clientele to fill the course. But I do have defensive pistol classes. They're very different from the women's self-defense course, because they're built more like I don't want to say typical, because every instructor out there has what they consider typical, but it's built like that arm range and beyond type scenario. Intro to defensive pistol does cover like weapon retention, some of the close quarter stuff. But the women's self-defense class, 90% of it is that imminent close contact range, you know, arm's length or less. And then I do cover in that class like transitioning to like a secondary attacker a little bit further off and that sort of thing.
All right.
So I do have like a more standard defensive pistol type class. The women's self-defense class is very separate from that. And then I also have like NRA basic pistol, basic rifle, avert. I do custom training, you know, active shooter response and stuff like that. And then, you know, E-care, CPR first aid, AED, wilderness first aid,
everything.
All that,
You have everything. Well, I have a surprise for you. Well, not necessarily a surprise, but something. When me and you first talked about it, what made me take this interview, what made me want you two here. Talking to you over these past couple of weeks, and you was just pretty much running down your students and everything that you had going on. Do you know, I guess you guys could feel it. Tom makes you feel comfortable, right?
Yes. Definitely.
All right. I have known you for a good bit now, and every time I've talked to you, sure you're big, get over that. But you have a very soft demeanor. Like if anybody wants to come talk to you, for the most part, you're gonna engage and have that conversation. So when you brought the ladies here and was telling me about everything that was going on, just like when I talked to you ladies outside, I wanted to take this because you, unbeknownst to you, everybody, you be the first person. So I was also a victim of sexual assault and rape when I was from baby 5 to about 7. So you are the first person to know this.
Yeah, I didn't see that plot twist coming. I will say you're an incredibly strong human being to actually acknowledge it and say it. And I hope any women out there watching this, or any men for that matter, similar circumstance, feel the same way, that, that's not a reflection on them. That's a circumstance of their life, and a horrible one they should have never been exposed to, but it's not a reflection on them, and you can overcome it.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing. And listening to you speak about being smaller or softer, I remember that being my primary thing. Like, I'm little. I really don't have anybody to go talk to. What do I do with these emotions? I remember feeling more alone than anything. Because, yeah, I had adults. And I think the misconception is, oh, say something. Everybody says say something. It's easier to just say something, but to muster that courage and how much energy it takes to say, all right, I'm going to go say something. I commend anybody that actually does, even the ones who haven't spoken up yet, to go out, and if it might not be immediate, but to actually work towards that, or gain a confidence, find a friend, a mentor, a class that you can feel confident enough to be like, okay, you know what? I need to let this go. And I think that was the biggest thing that happened to me. I felt afraid until I got older. And then I started knowing, I think, matter of fact, the fact that I think the worst part of it was my family members. It wasn't somebody that was like a stranger or something like that. So the fact that I have relations with these people, and give it to you again, to this day, I'm cordial with the people, but they have never spoken to me about it, anything like that. They have conversations with me. And even at this adult age, I'm like, should I say something? Like, you did it to me.
Yeah, at such a tender young age, just so innocent.
Yeah. And once again, I hope, like, anyone out there hearing this sees that as like a role model type thing. I've been guilty of that. See something, say something, or if it happens, say something. But where I'm not a victim, that is something very easy for me to say. But at the same time, I will say, that there has to be removal of the stigma.
Right.
If you're a victim of really any crime of violence or sexual violence, anything like that, that's not a reflection on you.
Yeah.
And the only way to get people like that out of the population of potential victims is to say something. So commend you for the strength in saying that, especially publicly.
Absolutely.
But I hope anyone else that's hearing this, that's going through the same thing, or has gone through the same thing, also takes that to heart.
Yeah, I wanted to say something based off just the energy in the room, being around you. And like you said, it was a stigma that not only are women going through molestation or rape or everything like that, guys, boys go through it too. And I feel like for us, it's growing up as men and being masculine. You hide it, you shut it down, say nothing at all. So yeah, definitely if it happens to guys or men, yeah, it's not a woman's act. Like, oh, this only happens.
That's actually a great point.
Yeah, this is not something that only happens to women. It's not at all. You don't have to be afraid of the judgment or whatever. So yeah, this was my truth, living it with you live right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's another really good point. We've talked a lot about women due to present company, of course. And of course, due to a women's self-defense class I've got coming up, but that's not, that dynamic that's not limited to women. And I have seen or talked to other men that's happened to. I will say you're one of the stronger ones to announce it, well, denounce it, I guess would be a better word, but own it and say that's not what defines me, and say it in such a public way.
to help others, hopefully,
Absolutely.
for accountability.
Yeah,
For
I gotta give you a fist bump on that one. That's a lot of strength.
Yeah, I didn't want to keep it quiet anymore. When I lit up, unbeknownst to you two, when I seen you, I was like, okay, I can say something now. So
Absolutely.
I didn't want to keep it a secret anymore. So that's why I was like, okay, I want to go ahead and put this out. That definitely see if you going through something, say something. So that's my story on that, and I just feel comfortable that I finally got it out. Honestly,
Yeah, like I said, massive props to you for being that strong about it. And like I said, that's a great point. It's not just women out there. I mean, statistically, women are more likely, at least, adult women and in that pre-adult stage.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of men that have suffered it, and a lot of kids, both genders have suffered it. It also brings up, not related to anything I do or anything I offer, but also, the need for mental health support and all that, which is something that's also been, near and dear to my heart. I do have a couple loved ones that struggle with mental health. One of them is related to sexual assault that's happened to her. So, yeah, I mean, do what you have to do. Take care of yourself. And don't let past tragedies define you.
From taking Tom's class, from everybody had their own story, do you feel as though now that you gain the confidence and you're more outwardly, I want to say, taking a class, are you guys confident now to be able to protect yourselves?
Absolutely, I am. I feel more confident in like every part of my life, though. It a lot of that came from these courses, and then a lot of it came from other work that I had to do on myself anyway. I want to go back to what you said though, because I feel like it's so important for us to highlight safe spaces. We just don't have enough safe spaces for people to be able to say the things they need to say, which is why I think emotional and mental health gets untreated for so long and goes undetected for so long because there's not enough safe spaces. And when you have an instructor or when you have a certain class or type of classes that you feel comfortable taking, you can start to feel safe enough and confident enough in every aspect of your life that you don't have to hold back on things anymore. But we have to have those safe spaces, and we just don't have enough of those. But when you get one, take advantage of it, use it to its fullest, and use it in every part of your life that you can. But yeah, I feel very confident in a lot of ways. Not to say I'm not still doing a lot of work on myself, because I am, but I even feel comfortable enough to be able to say that. There was a time that I would be like, oh no, I'm not working on anything. I'm good. Knew I wasn't good. So
With that situation, now do you say, with the advice you just gave to everybody, that you have a safe space now?
I do have safe spaces. Yes. And I look for them. And I don't just look for them, but I try to create them wherever I am. I try to be a safe space or a safe person. No judgment. Say what you need to say. I won't be offended. If I am, I'll get over it. But if it'll make you feel more comfortable, if it'll get you through what you need to get through, we can work through it together. Or I can just take it, absorb it, and it doesn't have to go any further than that.
How about you?
That was well said, the safe spaces. Yeah, similarly. I mean, before, if there was a gun in the room and something happened, I'd probably ignore it and run away. I had no knowledge. Now I feel confident enough to pick up the weapon and, be a good guy with it if I have to.
Were you around, I guess, growing up or teen, adult, were you around a lot of firearms that made you nervous, or you just nervous, period?
I was in a rough area, and you had to kind of hold your own. So I did have pepper spray. I would have a knife. And I mean, background-wise, I happen to be from Afghanistan. I've been back to my motherland. It's very much, to each their own and hold your own. So I come from a bloodline of people who, can't trust their government and have the right to bear arms. And as a woman, I stand by that.
Coming from where you came from, would you say, coming from where you came from, do you feel like you're an anomaly? That you're like, I want to be able to protect myself?
Yeah, even more so, yeah.
Okay.
And I think people of color, minority populations do have a lot of these struggles. and we need to be empowered and confident to handle it.
What do you think, knowing what you know now, what do you think would be an empowering thing? What do you think how you can empower somebody now? Or you personally, how do you think?
Take self-defense classes, have a safe space where you can talk about things that happen to you, put yourself in uncomfortable environments so you can test your own self psychologically and see how stronger you can get, how you can handle yourself in different situations. This is life. We might be comfortable in a certain area, in a certain city, in our certain zip code, but what happens when you travel? What happens when you go somewhere new, or you're in an airport, or you're in a vicinity where something is going on that's dangerous, or that needs your attention and needs your focus on exit strategies and protecting your family and whoever's around you. So I'm the oldest of 6. I kind of was like that protective type from the get-go. So
how did you, being a protective and being the oldest, what was an example for you or something that you did that made you were just saying stepping out your comfort zone? So what did you do to make yourself step out your comfort zone and feel comfortable outside in your comfort zone?
I guess I just lived my life. I try to live my life freely, but it's hard as a woman. For example, when I was younger, I used to work a teenage job in a movie theater, and I would do opening nights and box office hits and stuff. So by the time I would get home, it'd be 2, 3 a.m. So I'm walking to the parking lot practically alone, and that's just me living my free life. But at the same time, you do have to think about scenarios and make sure you have your keys a certain way and who's around and what's happening, because it's life.
I want to ask this to everyone here, especially, being women. Do you feel there's a burden with having to always, well, not always, or be on guard less than a man has to be? Like you were saying, oh, he goes outside to a move and go to his car. He's not initially thinking, oh, I got to hold my keys a certain way. I got to walk this way. Do you feel like that's a certain burden as a woman?
Yeah, it is. We all have different privileges and struggles just based on our appearance, unfortunately. And yeah, for women it is.
Well, for you, sir, I would just like to say you have did a damn good job with your students.
I appreciate that.
What is really next for this thriving business? Because I know you have so many. What is next for this? Where do you see this going?
Well, for Crotalus Defensive Services, I mean, there's always going to be more stuff coming out. And like I said, I try to take classes every year, both as a student, but also professional types classes. And I try to also take instructor level classes whenever I can. So of course there's going to be more content, but also the topics we're talking about, they continuously evolve. I mean, you know, aside from self-defense, like CPR, first aid, AED, the standards for that change, how many beats per minute and how many breaths.
Yes,
all
that's
that.
always changing.
Yes. Well, it's the same thing in the self-defense world. You know, the threats change. I mean, active shooter response, the dynamic, but behind the concept is ever evolving. But at the same time, I stay up to date on what I'm teaching concealed carry or self-defense or the women's self-defense course. I try to stay very up to date about what's going on right now. What are the new threats? If there's kind of a new, how can I say it? A new approach by predators, and how they approach their victims. That stuff changes too. And I try to stay on top of it. So my classes always change. Every time I give
It's
at least
evolving.
one of the classes that Crotalus Defensive Services developed, if you take it multiple times, you're going to see something a little bit different each time, because I'm always putting in something
As you
new.
should, yeah.
So that's going to change. In the future, through Crotalus Defensive Services, I've been in process, but it's kind of a long process to get everything set up, to start a nonprofit to help survivors of violence, survivors of sexual violence, that want self-defense training, both from the never again standpoint, but also from the overcome standpoint. That's probably gonna be a few years down the road. I'm not gonna start it up half-ass.
Right.
When the launch button on that gets hit, it'll be done right. So that's a few years down the road. So yeah, that's for me. And I just started a new business too, and that's in development stages, spending money. I'm doing aerial photography. I'm also a pilot and a drone pilot. So
How old are you?
we're going to leave that as a question mark for this interview.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, before we get out of here, is there anything you ladies would like to add or say?
I just recommend all women to give it a shot, give it a try. No pun intended, but
Not just women.
How are you?
There are so many things to add, but I agree with Perry. If you're hesitant, try to find a way not to be hesitant and go ahead, take the class, do something that's going to make you feel more secure and more safe. Find a safe space, be a safe space, put yourself in uncomfortable situations. I really like that advice, and I didn't realize it until she said it, but that's exactly what the simulator class did for me because I realized how slow my response time was. I was like, "Oh, I got to do better," but I didn't realize that until the simulator class. So I agree with you. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations and see how you are, see where you need to improve so that when an uncomfortable situation comes up, you have a little bit better idea how to handle it. And don't try not to be afraid. It's hard it's hard not to. It's easy to say don't be afraid, but try not to be afraid. Be more curious, be willing to learn, be willing to be open. You might surprise yourself what you learn and what you can do.
When was the last time you surprised yourself?
Oh, I can't think of it. I surprise myself a lot though because I find myself doing things that I ordinarily wouldn't do just because I'm like, I think I can do it. I think I'm gonna try. I went from, oh, I don't think I can ever do that to, well, let me just try. So I do those things so often, but I can't really think of anything now. I know sometimes I do things in the gym that I didn't think I could
It could be
do.
something small as that.
Yeah. Well then,
It's
well
small
then
as
probably a
that.
couple of days ago I tried something that it didn't go so well, but I didn't completely fail. And so I'll try it again. I'll get some help with it next time, but I'll try it again.
So my overarching thing from what I've seen from both of you is it's been a lot of growth from where you were to meeting Tom to the work you did after the classes to the personal growth that you did after the classes. So I commend you for always pushing the envelope, like you were saying with your classes, always growing, always evolving, taking yourself and putting yourself in something small, like, hey, I'm gonna do a new workout today. I like that. I like that you have taken on this role with knowing that you're the oldest, that, hey, if anything happens, I can protect you. And for my situation, that means a lot. And for my situation, trying something new as simple as going to work out or just finding a safe space. I like that. And from you, the man who initiated all of this, I would like to say the work that you are doing is phenomenal. What you were
Thank you. That
saying
actually means a lot.
what you were saying earlier about, yeah, you could have took a lot of routes, you could have got the money, you could have got out of there and did whatever you wanted with yourself. But you showed a passion and a care, just like you were saying to your sister, that it could have been easy to blow it off. It's like, okay, well, I wish you good on that, and then go on about your life. But you took a stance and said, you know what? This is important. Even though it didn't happen to me, I want to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else. And that's what makes it important. So for everybody here, everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching, if you look in this room, everybody's different, right? So with that being said, your ally or safe space can come from you, from you, from you. It's not a direct formula. You don't always have to go to the person that looks just like you or the same gender as you or anything
Absolutely.
like that. So step out, talk to people. You never know. Someone can have a similar story that talking to you, now I feel confident. So reach out, talk, try new things, and look at the promo code at the bottom where you can get in this man's classes and evolve.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's like a great point to highlight. Honestly, is let's be there for everyone else. You know, I mean, we've got a diverse group here. but you know, as humans, let's be there for human. I've actually been very like warned by this because they're describing me as like a warm, caring person almost. And same as you, like a few weeks ago, someone that actually liked me at work described me as, I believe the quote was, an emotionalist asshole that underneath was still at least partially human. And that was someone that liked me. So knowing that, you know, I do still have that other side.
Yes.
And, you know, absolutely. You know, let's take care of everyone else, be there for everyone else. You know, we've touched on not just self-defense, but we've touched on, you know, mental health and recovery and everything. I think those are even more important topics than, you know, my business or anything like that. So yeah, I think that's a great highlighted point.
I told you 2 weeks ago, you have a soft spot. You're just an asshole. But you
He's gotta be in his line of work, have that roughness.
You gotta see it when it comes and it goes like back. But it's a spark. Not a fire, but it's a spark. So
You gotta start somewhere.
You gotta start somewhere. So I appreciate everybody for coming on. I appreciate everybody for sharing stories, the parts of their stories, sharing this amazing business that you have, one of 30. So I appreciate that. This business that you have is awesome. I'm glad that your Facebook came back on. Before you came, talk to 10, your situation, talk to 10 women. They are very interested in taking your classes. They wanted to come and share their own stories once I told them about the ladies coming on. And a lot of women reached out. It was like, well, yeah, I want to talk about my story now. I want to talk about my story now. And they was like, well, even if we can't, I want to be able to tell. They wanted me to tell you, thank you for providing a safe space for women to be able to not only share their stories, but to come and just change their futures now. Because not wanting to be a victim and being looked at as a survivor now, like, hey, I'm just not a victim. I don't want to be seen as that. And that was a lot of the situations and comments that I got was, yeah, I survived that. I'm not some prissy, someone you just beat on and things like that. And I was like, yeah, you are a survivor. And they wanted me to personally thank you. Ari is one of them. So she wanted me to personally thank you.
Yeah, I've got to respond to that one. You know, that always gets me when someone implies that because someone's a victim, you know, they were weak or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've talked about my little sister, but my wife was targeted. She was targeted as a potential victim once. And my wife and my adoptive little sister, they're two of the strongest women I know. So that stigma, you know, that needs to, you know, go out the window. Also this women's self-defense class, it's gonna be special. My wife is actually supposed to take that. So you better believe I'm gonna make that class as good as the greatest thing that I can. Because that one does hit close to home. That's one of my people that's coming to learn. She was raised in a very non-confrontational sort of upbringing, and hey, I'm not belittling that. But she was raised without, you know, self-defense training or firearms training, things that, you know, I grew up with. So she's learning, and she's come a long way in her learning cycle for that. So yeah, this women's self-defense class, it's going to be killer. It's going to be a great thing for everyone involved, including me and whoever the other instructor is, still lining up my secondary instructor. So yeah, but let's also get rid of that notion that because someone's a victim that, you know, they're less than or weak. Some of the victims I met are some of the strongest people I know, just that they're still walking around breathing. They haven't become a statistic shows that someone that's been through something like that can be the strongest person, you know.
And that's a fact, man or woman. So this has been another different but very amazing episode of the Vibes Podcast. Tune in. If you're seeing this right now, which you should be, this episode will be out with less than 20. This is an urgent one for me. So this episode will be out in the next 10 hours. So thank everybody for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being amazing to give me this opportunity.
Could I cover the promo codes real quick?
You want to cover that? Tell them.
All right. So promo codes on the bottom. If you want the women's self-defense course, it's 25% off. So instead of $250, it's $150. Also, promo code at the bottom, second promo code that'll be listed. If you want the women's self-defense course, but you really don't have a background with firearms, haven't taken any sort of firearm training, free blended NRA defensive pistol. with the full price purchase of the women's self-defense course. Both codes will be at the bottom.
Both codes will be at the bottom. Reach out. He's going to get you right. Your confidence will be better than ever. So this is another episode of the Vibes Podcast, and catch us on the next one. Thanks, guys.